You're listening to Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci, where I speak to business professionals from all walks of life. Thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Hey, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Business Stories podcast. And as always, I am bringing on people that are inspirational, that have amazing stories for themselves, have lived an interesting life and transition in entrepreneurship, and now they are thriving. And my guest today is one of those people, Mr. Brandon Ward. Started out in law enforcement, believe it or not, and now he has transitioned into entrepreneurship, motivating people. He's embedded in the community of business, helping business people grow and thrive. So, Brandon, thank you so much. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me.
Of course. So this is an interesting story, Brandon, because you started out with a law enforcement career. You transitioned into entrepreneurship and business coaching. Can you talk about what drove you to make that leap from law enforcement into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, you think about it, big difference in careers, but my goal has always been to help others. So
Yeah.
in law enforcement, my thing was helping those who couldn't help themselves. And then once I left law enforcement within 3 years, I was pretty much, it was a transition of me trying to figure out who I was. And I became a law enforcement agent officer at the age of 22.
Mm-hmm.
So I just became an adult, just figuring out who I was, just learning what discipline is, pretty much just figuring out life, and still didn't really have an understanding. But I was blessed to be put in a position of not just influence, but in a position to be able to make a difference. After doing that for 2.5 years, just learning about leadership, learning about discipline, learning about how to deal with people, communication, because a lot of law enforcement is you being able to adapt and get people to do what you want them to do
Yeah.
without having to use any type of force, right? And then transitioning from that, I went into corporate leadership. So I had a staff of about 125 employees. I had 6 different locations, and I had public safety. I was the manager for like public safety for the College of Southern Nevada here, Nevada State College. And in that role, it was just making sure that I had a great relationship with the captain of their PD, and then being able to make sure that we can secure all of the campuses here in our valley. I did that for a good 8 years, 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then transitioning into business coaching. That came by destiny. There was an opportunity for a franchise that was here. They're called Action Coach, and a guy named Brad Sugars. He's a certified business coach. He has that program. They have an amazing training. And what had happened was I knew someone who worked for their company, and while they were doing their personal and professional development, I kind of would just sit in and just watch and pay attention to what they were doing. And then after a while, I noticed that they kind of like set it down. And I was like, I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity, and I'm gonna go through this course myself and just see if I can, to see what I can learn from it. So I did their internal training, and I was able to get a certification. So the crazy thing is, and long story short, Action Coach, their main office is here, their headquarters, and they needed a trainer for their franchisees. But in order for you to be able to train them, you had to have the training yourself. So there was a former director who was there who put me through the training, and they only put me through the training so I can train their franchisees. And I went through the whole entire 10-day training. I think it's about $50,000, pretty much. That was the value of the training.
Mm-hmm.
And I smashed it. And after going through that training and getting that certification, I started working with their franchises. But then COVID happened. And then when COVID happened, pretty much the whole entire system went digital.
Mm-hmm.
And once the system went digital, that was when pretty much all the franchisees, they decided, we don't have to depend on the franchise and their videos, we can kind of make videos ourselves. And that was where I really got into it. I really started, uh, just started making content, started, creating different platforms. I started doing digital uh, seminars and workshops, and then I pretty much transitioned my whole entire business while they were still figuring it out. And my contract pretty much ran up still during COVID as they were figuring things out. I still had my certification, and I decided, you know what, I'm just going to create my business called the We Mentality. And the We Mentality is a business that we created pretty much off the basis of leadership, team, professional development, and problem solving, helping people execute their mission. And that's pretty much what I do now. And that's how I got out of law enforcement and into what I do now.
Wow. So can you talk a little bit about some of the skills you talked about law enforcement, the communication skills, getting people to listen to you, doing things in a nonviolent way? I mean, I'm sure you had some stories where it was not always easy, but can you talk about how you apply those skills and what those skills are with that
I
career
think
compared to what
I
you
think
do
that's a
now?
great
Yeah.
I think that's a great question. It's an amazing question. First and foremost is communication.
Yeah.
And communication is everything. I don't care what the relationship is, what the environment, what the situation is. You have to effectively communicate. And I come from a culture of law enforcement where we used to go by a ask them, tell them, make them. So if
Hmm.
we asked them and they didn't comply, then we told them. And if they didn't comply, then we made them. It's a total different culture now. Um, but what that taught me how to do as a young man, keep in mind I was only 22 years old as
Yeah.
a law enforcement officer, it taught me to command presence first off. And that was where I got my courage into all of my communication. I feared nothing. And that's because, a law enforcement teaches you it doesn't matter how big they are, how many people there are, you just need to be intelligent. And I've learned that in order for you to get people to comply, it's better for you to be able to communicate with them,
Yeah.
for you to be able to connect with them, and then they'll do what you say. And then once I learned that about in my law enforcement career, it was something that I realized that they didn't teach us though. It wasn't nothing that they trained us on. It was just something where you had to just learn from testing, testing and measuring,
Yeah.
right? And as I went through my field training, you go through field training, they train you with four different officers. And within those four different officers, they all have a different personality. Now, I don't know if if the system is created for it to be like this, where they partner you with four different field training officers who have different personality types.
Hmm.
But when you are in a car and you are training with those guys, you have to figure out what it is that they love, what it is that they like, how do they do things. And
Yeah.
then you have to adapt your way of doing things in order for you to get the best scores. So, like when I would be with one officer, he just wanted me to be brave and courageous. So, he didn't want to see any fear. He always wanted to see me take action. And that was good. I learned from him that when I go into a scene, that I need to take control of the scene and I need to command presence. I had another guy who, when I went to the scene, he was like, "You don't need to be all strict. You don't need to be demanding." He was big on making a connection, and then making the connection by just being, kind of just being like the center of attention.
Hmm.
That was what he taught me. There was another guy who taught me to be empathetic, right? You go into a situation, have empathy of everyone's perspective, not just the person who's the aggressor, but also the victim and the witnesses. You got to put yourself in all of those people's shoes. So
Hmm.
then I learned that when I go on a scene that it was more than just the the call for service. There was a whole entire scene that I needed to process. And then there was another person that I was with. They were just analytical, right? I had to make sure I knew how many people were there. I needed to pay attention to everything. Like they were so strict. Like we'd be going down the street, they want to know where we at. And if I didn't know where we at, they had to get out the car and go walk and figure it out. They
Hmm.
wanted the reports to be specific. They wanted everything to be right.
Yeah.
And that taught me accuracy. And when they taught me accuracy, it just kind of that kind of molded me. So as I became a police officer, um, you know, it gave me a bunch of different skill sets that I was able to take into the streets, and I use those same skill sets now in business and in my training, that I utilize now in business, whether I'm selling, whether I'm doing marketing, or whether I'm out networking. My main thing that I'm focused on first is processing the scene and then making the connection and just
Hmm.
seeing where I could be of assistance, right? I may not be the solution, but I may know of a solution. And then I'll try to just be the connector. And that's kind of how I've transitioned those skills into where I do now.
So, I mean, one of the things I think you learn too in that role is managing fear and uncertainty, right?
Mm,
Because in law enforcement, I think there's obviously an element of fear and a lot of uncertainty in certain situations. Can you give us an example of a particular time where you had a lot of that and you had to use those skills to really make things work? Because I think in business, we face the same
mm,
thing. We have fear and we have uncertainty, right? We don't know what the future holds. We
definitely.
don't know when the next COVID might hit. We don't know when a big client drops out, you know? So, can you talk to us a little bit about how you apply those skills to that situation?
Definitely. If you think about it, the worst thing you can do in a situation of fear is panic, right?
Yeah.
Uh, um, and when a person panics, they kind of handicap themselves of all decision making. You kind of just put yourself in a situation where it just is what it is, and you take what comes of it.
Yeah.
As a police officer, you go into every situation with fear because you have to think safety first, right? It's your safety. Your main goal is to make it home at the end of the night. So you do whatever you got to do to make it home at the end of the night. But you got to be strategic, in these situations, right? You can't go into situations and people see the fear on you because they expect for you to be brave. You are their symbol of hope during a turbulent time.
Yeah.
So it just taught me that when I go into situations where fear is present, to be mindful that first off, um, fear is just false evidence appearing real. And that's just something I learned just in my professional development, to go into every situation knowing that there is going to be some type of hope, and then knowing that there has to be a solution to this problem
Yeah.
or this issue. And it just so happened that I've been put in a position to be that solution to the problem. And then seeing myself is kind of like you see yourself and you hold yourself to a higher standard. And then you're optimistic, right? Things can go wrong, but you try to find every way for them to go right.
Hmm.
And the optimism portion is it's your responsibility. And then it's not just your responsibility. You also have a team around you. And then you also have to have faith that, that things are going to go in your direction in the
Yeah.
correct way. And then you also have to believe that you're prepared for any situation, right? Although this may not be a situation that you're used to, you've already went through the training, you've already went through the stressful situations. You have to believe in yourself and you have to believe in that training. And it just so happens that when you are put in those situations, it becomes second nature. Um, you just show up, you deliver. And in business, it's the same exact way. You got to be able to pivot, you got to be able to be optimistic. And at the same sense, you have to be brave. But then at the same time, you don't have to do everything yourself. There's a whole strategic alliance and a whole community of people that you can probably draw from who
Yeah.
can help you in that situation. So that's the best way that I can answer that question.
I think this segues into another question about mindset. I think there's this perception that when people become successful, then they have the mindset of success, but you have to have the mindset of success before you get successful, right? So, what do you think are the elements to the right mindset? Because I think in our world today, between the media, news, stuff in the world going on, we are fed a lot that creates a toxic mindset for a lot of people. People, do
Mm.
you feel like that's what's happening? Like, do you feel like people's mindsets are generally off and the toxic mindset is corrupting people's ability to be successful in some way?
I, I, I think people are measuring their success to other people's success. and you
Okay.
can't do that in life.
Yeah.
And because if I can easily look at someone and see someone driving the Rolls Royce or the Lamborghini, and they already got the big home, and you really don't understand the sacrifices that that person made in order for them to be there, and
Yeah.
not just the sacrifices. It all comes with a little bit of luck, and it comes with a little bit of risk. And I'll tell you this, my biggest issue, I can act like because I have a history in law enforcement that I'm pretty much made for entrepreneurship, but that's far from the case. I still haven't put myself in a situation that's completely risky in business. And when you don't put yourself in risky situations in business, it's hard for you to get those big rewards. You really do have to believe, and you really do have to put yourself in position in order for you to really scale. And I think mindset wise, I've been getting a check all my life for 37 years. And then once I became an entrepreneur, now I have to depend on my own grit, my own sales, my own marketing, building relationships. And I feel as if, I'm on year 3 in my business now. And if I was to compare myself to other people's businesses and where they are at the 3 years, you see some people's success, and they're living it. They're out here really making it. But now that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm also a business advisor, and I get to hear a lot of people's stories. A lot of people's success isn't even what you think it is. A lot of times people are just able to get a bigger loan than you're able to get because they qualify, and then they're not, they may not be um, they may not be responsible with their loan, or they may have to look rich, right? It's just so many
Yeah.
ways that people can look as if they're successful. And I think that what happens is when we start to compare ourselves to others, and then we start to move like them, and we don't understand why they move the way they move. We start to put ourselves in situations to where we really can't compete, and then when we can't compete, we fall short. We lose confidence, and when
Yeah.
we start to lose confidence, that's when that mindset starts to pretty much fall apart because all your weaknesses start to show then. And if you don't have that grit, if you don't have a balanced back spirit, everything just kind of fall by the wayside. I think you just got to go back to the basics when it comes to everybody. People have to know exactly what it is that they want. There's not one business or one client that when I work with them, I don't figure out what their own personal goals are and what their and then I start working on the business goals. And the reason why I do that is I have to figure out what personally motivates them
Mm-hmm.
and what drives them. And then I
Yeah.
have to figure out if they're aligned with that. Because if they're not aligned, there's not going to be fulfillment by the time they reach whatever that goal is. And I
Right.
feel like this is where people are just going after things that's not realistic in the achievement and the time that they want to achieve them. Or they're just, like I said, they're just comparing themselves to others. If you really know who you are, if you really know exactly what it is that you want out of life, and then you really accept your story. Like I'm going through a time in my life right now where I'm in the process of going through a divorce. And when you go through a divorce, I don't think people realize that it's like starting over,
Mm-hmm.
all over again.
Yeah.
And when you start all over again, you have to let go of the old and you have to welcome in the new. And then your mindset has to be whatever I was is what I was, and what I'm becoming is what I'm building. And every day, the mindset is to get 1% better, to improve each and every day, whether it's within my business, whether it's within myself, or whether it's within my community. So when it comes, it was a loaded answer that I just gave you. I apologize,
That's
but I
okay.
do. I truly feel like it. I truly do feel like it's just all based on people aiming for things that they truly want, and then doing whatever it is that you have to do to get it. If it doesn't matter to you, you won't achieve it.
Yeah.
You'll always fall short because you know problems are gonna exist. Obstacles are going to exist, especially on this journey
Yeah.
that we're on now. But yeah, when it comes to mindset, you just got to stay positive and focus on you, know what it is that you want, what you desire, and celebrate yourself every day, even your small wins.
Mm-hmm. You've written a couple of books. You have the Pain of a Man and the Manifesting Playbook. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired that and what kind of takeaways people can get from those books?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. For the pain of a
Yeah.
man, man to man, So The Pain of a Man is a book that, uh, as men, we go through things and we try to remain strong and we try to remain resilient. And
Yeah.
we don't really like to talk about our shortcomings. In The Pain of a Man, I want to talk about how me experiencing a tragedy when my daughter was 6 years old, she was hit by a car
Oh,
and I had to
wow.
give her CPR. I was there with her and I had to give her CPR in order to save her life, waited for the paramedics. Now, my daughter, before she got hit by a car, she was a student of the month, honor student. She was just great, like a superstar in school. And after the accident, although she survived, she has a left side deficiency where she can't really work her left side or right side. So she pretty much had to teach herself to be left-handed.
Hmm.
And, just watching her go through her situation, I just watched her be resilient.
Yeah.
And I remember going through that process of her uh, her healing, the doctor, I remember the doctor said she had a 10% chance of living. And from that 10%, we would try to figure out, we tried to get as close to 100% as we could. And I remember like every time I would talk to the doctor, he'd be like, yeah, she got 2% better this week. She got 5% better this week. She got 10% better this week, right? 1%. Like, and the number just kept going up, going up. And that was where I developed the mindset of, we as human beings, it's very important that we heal. It could constantly get better. And even if it's just you getting 1% better, right? That's progress. And that 1% becomes over time a huge compound. You'd be surprised at the person you'll be at the end of the year. So watching Brazil get better, I developed that mind state. That was when I got into like personal and professional development. That was when I got big into like spirituality and meditation and all of those type of things.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to kind of tell the world about, the process of grieving, because there's like 5 stages of grieving. And as you're going through these things as men, we don't always make the right decisions. We can't always show up with the strong face. At some point in time, we have to be weak. We need somebody who can support us. And that was what the book was about. It was about me doing the wrong things at times to eliminate the pain, like drinking and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there was some times where I talked about doing the shadow work, doing meditation, reading books, getting into like the 12 agreements. I mean, I've read every book that had to do with personal development. And that feeding myself that information um, helped me develop myself, not just externally, but internally.
Hmm.
Gave me a lot more confidence, gave me
Yeah.
purpose in life. And I just wanted to tell the world my story. And at the same sense, there's a lot of things that we hide as men and people don't realize that we deal with these things and they become like secrets and then it changes us. And I wanted to just release all of those secrets that I had. And I wanted to do it publicly and I wanted to do it and take my power back. That's what I consider it, taking your power back. And
Yeah.
I talk about some of my most embarrassing moments in there. And at the age of at the age of um how old was I? Well, I'll say my son was 12 years old when I found out that he wasn't biologically mine, and you
Oh,
can only imagine how much that devastated me
yeah.
as a man, and how, and then so now I have to show how I have to not be bitter about that, but I have to utilize that to even be more purposeful about life
Yeah.
and tell my story and then help others. So there's a little bit of that in that book as well. But it's really kind of like my tell all and my survival story, all at the same sense, and me becoming more purposeful. And ever since I went through that, now, it's the reason why I do what I do now. So pouring into businesses, pouring into people, pouring into my family, and then pouring into myself and my community. And that's pretty much the premise behind that book.
Well, I'm gonna ask you too. Like, I feel like you and I probably grew up with our fathers and grandfathers not really being vulnerable as men. I think back then it wasn't normal for men to try to better themselves and be open and honest about their emotions, but also work on their emotions. I think it was internalized. Like I think it was like, well, I'm going to drink or I'm going to go out with the guys. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid or confront the pains and the struggles.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's been the process for many decades, especially with, our my father and my grandfather? Like it seems like that generation, that was kind of the way to go. Do you see that changing then? Do you feel like we
Yeah,
we really
it's
need to
the
break out of that?
yeah, it's the old America.
Yeah.
The old American way is, we used to be, the eagle. You look
Yeah.
at the flag, and a
Yeah.
lot of pride, and we were
Yeah.
strong, and a lot to be and, and that's to be admired. Like, I don't think people realize the inner strength and that the spirit that feeds you as a person. And
Yeah.
I definitely think you have to have that. But what I have learned is we are all different.
Yeah.
And just by personality wise, there are some people who are eagles. And that's what we teach within my business is we teach personality in bird form. And, we teach that an eagle is dominant. They're challenging, they're fast, they're go-getters, they could be disruptive. That's who they are. And that was the personality of America for so long. And if you ever pay attention to every country has a different personality. China has a personality of like a dove, right? They're very quiet.
Yeah.
They do things individual. That's just who they are. But I don't really want to get into that too much. But that's when I just learned that everybody is just different. So if you put people in situations where they can thrive and excel, then they'll be that. There are people who are passive. They're not leaders. They just want to help out others. All they want to do is be supportive. So
Yeah.
their goal is to help other people win. And then you have other people who help people to be, I want to make sure that you do everything the right way. So I'm gonna make sure that I do your checks and balances and things like that. So I just feel like we have to figure out as America, or understanding as America, that we're all different. We all come from different backgrounds, and that presents a challenge for all of us. And we all need to just be better with our communication. We need to be diverse as possible, and we need to try to be as understanding as possible, especially if you really want to make a difference here. If you really want
Yeah.
to make this place better, the best thing you can do is understand others and accept them for who they are. And if you don't accept them for who they are, just don't put yourself in that environment to where you can cause any strife, right?
Hmm.
But I just feel like that's where we are in America. I think we're in a time where people just need to understand and accept each other's differences, and then understand that people have their specific place in life, and we should put them there.
Yeah. You brought up meditation, and I'm just curious because I've been
Mm.
studying it for years. What drove you to do it, and what do you think you're gaining from it? And like, what's your typical routine with it?
So I was reading this book. It was a guy, I don't even know how to say his name. It's Che Chung Chungpa, something like that.
Yeah.
And the guy was like a guru in China,
Yeah.
and he used to do a bunch of these little seminars, workshops. But that was where I learned pretty much how to meditate. And I talk about it in my book, Pain of the Man. When I first was introduced to meditation, it was just me just observing my thought processes, right? Just realizing that I wasn't in control of my thoughts,
Yeah.
that my mind had a mind of its own, that if I just sat there, eventually I would stop thinking about whatever I was thinking about, and then thoughts would just come to me. So I initially taught myself how to observe my thoughts, and how observe my thoughts as they came, and then observe my thoughts as they left. In a book that I read, I don't know if it was by Eckhart Tolle, but he was talking about meditation, and he explained it like you're at a river, and you're watching these fish swim down the river. They never really swim upstream. They always swim downstream.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you pay attention to the fish as it's going down the river, that's what it's like with your thought processes. Like, you can get stuck on one thought, and you can watch that one thought like just swim down the river. And all you're doing is just following that one thought. Like, it's just you don't. So what I learned is you can either follow the thought, or you can let the thought go. And then I learned to let thoughts go. And when you learn to let thoughts go, you make room for new thoughts. And this is where I learned that this is how I think spirit communicates with us.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I could be selective of whether I want to keep that thought or whether I want to let it go. And what I learned to do is let it go. And then I learned to keep the thoughts that were creative. Right. And I learned that when I was first started meditating, that your initial thoughts are always your biggest issues that are going on in your life. So if there's any problems, those things come up. If there's any health issues, those things come up. If there's any pain and any anger, those things come up. So
Mm-hmm.
all the bad stuff comes up a lot. But then if you wait long enough, you'll start realizing there's some creative that starts to come.
Yeah.
And then once the creative stuff starts to come, you stick with it. And you just kind of like manifest, you kind of like this communicate with it. So that's what I learned how to meditate in that form. There's times when I don't want to think. I just need to clear my mind, and it's just clearing my thought processes until I get to a place of serenity and peace where I'm not thinking at all. And then there's times when I have to go through the feelings and the emotions of the thought. So there's some thoughts that may bring up some pain, that may bring some agony and some sadness. And what I have to talk, and then so this is the biggest lesson I learned during meditation is your body cannot distinguish whether or not what you're thinking is real or just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So your body starts to react
Yeah.
based on the thought process. It's just kind of like if you were to think about something sexual, your body begins to react, right? It's
Yeah.
just your body just does that.
Yeah.
If it's something that causes stress, you can start to get anxiety. And then if you start to think of sadness, you start to feel depression. And then I learned that, okay, well, if thoughts create those emotions, then it's important for me to be able to expel those out necessarily, or to just sit in it. You know, if something is making you mad and it's causing you to be angry, you can just sit in that emotion and then watch it just die off. And
Yeah.
then that's when I realized that you don't have to react to everything, right? If you just let the emotions die down, they'll go away. So that's how
Yeah.
I kind of use my meditation. Right now, I just meditate like 10 minutes a day. It's
Mm-hmm.
just me sitting somewhere and just calmness. When I first started doing it, I was crossing my legs and sitting in the rooms in the darkness by myself. Now it's just I can meditate anywhere. And that's my way of doing so. For those who don't know how to meditate, I first learned to meditate. I read a book called Meditation for Dummies, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very useful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it works for me. And I think I should actually meditate more.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever experimented like doing it indoors, doing it outdoors on a sunny day? Like, do you have a preference of where you like to be or where you feel the most benefit from it?
Well, if I'm doing it intentionally, honestly, it was best for me when I had my prayer room.
Yeah.
I had like a closet that it was just nothing but a candle and a notepad, and I had like a little prayer book. But that was the
Yeah.
most useful for me because it was very intentional. But I just don't feel like it's necessary. Like if you can just find your peace and your serenity, and you can just find somewhere that's quiet, I think that's the best way. I used to have kids used to have a trampoline in the backyard, one of those
Mm-hmm.
big ones,
Yeah.
and he used to have like the tarp around it that like kept you from being able to fall out.
Yeah.
But I remember I used to have some amazing meditation sessions in there. So just anywhere you can find peace.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did this. I used to so I do a lot of speaking as well, and I actually did this speech, and I tell people that if you're so busy, um, when it's time for you to do a number two in the restroom, that may be your time to meditate. Because you're in the bathroom, the door's
Yeah.
closed, you by
Yeah.
yourself. Most people get on the phone or most people read something. I
Yeah.
tell people go ahead and just check your thought processes and see what's going on. It's the perfect time for you to meditate. So that's what I actually did a speech on that. But yeah, anywhere you can find quietness and peace.
Yeah, I mean, and most people don't realize because I've been studying it a while too, is there's so many different types of meditation. And there are people that train you and tell you you have to meditate 30 minutes a day, or it's like you don't have to do that. What you need to do is if you can do it a minute a day, that's better than nothing, right? So
Definitely.
I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of people out there that say, well, you have to follow this regimented meditation routine every day, and that's not the case. Do what's right for you, but do something, even if it is just a few seconds or a minute. It can really change your outlook and your day. So, um, I love that. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I
Um,
love it too, man. I'm glad to hear that you meditate. It's a great practice, and keep encouraging people to do it because it's life changing.
well, I've had people tell me, that people who are spiritual in other ways, they look at meditation as diverging from whatever religion they're a part of. So if they're Christian, they think it's, they might be hardcore Christian and think, well, that's not part of what my religion is, but it really isn't about that. It's more about
Hmm.
helping your mindset, helping your stress levels, improving yourself physically and mentally. It really has nothing to do with what you believe in, but I think people often get those two things confused. Do you see that too? And you're when you talk to people about this?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, so I used to be real big in the church, and this was
Yeah,
one of the battles that I have fought with as well.
yeah,
Was, is Jesus okay with me doing this? This was when I was ignorant and learning. But
right.
if you really read the Bible and you study it, there's a portion where Jesus goes, he leaves for a certain amount of time. And
Yeah,
when he leaves, he goes into this cave.
yeah,
And when he's in that cave, that's what he's doing. He's meditating. I think that was right before Satan um, tried to, he tried to, I forgot whatever. Satan tried to seduce him or whatever.
yeah,
And he was trying, but that's what Jesus was doing. He was
yeah,
meditating. Now, I just feel like people have to believe that the answer is within. Um, and if you don't believe it, then meditation just isn't for you.
yeah.
But truly deep down inside, the answer is always within because, like I said, there's always a source that's trying to communicate with us, but we're so distracted that
Hmm.
it can't get through.
Yeah,
And the only way that you're going to be able to connect to that source is if you meditate. And it's
yeah,
hard for you to quiet your mind, and it's hard for you to find peace and get into a position of where people won't interrupt you. My best meditations happen about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning when children are asleep. When nobody is up and it's just me.
yeah,
And I can just focus on me. Like I can love me. Like when I'm up at that time from 3 to 6, yeah, that's the time I tell people don't bother me because it's me time and it's me really loving myself and pouring into myself. And you have to be okay with who you are. If you have to live life by design, if you don't trust yourself and your decision making and your thought processes, and you need a book to pretty much regulate your decisions and how you live life, then so be it. But to be honest with you, in order for you to really connect spiritually and religiously, you have to be able to connect to yourself. That's the only way that it's going to work. Is
yeah,
if you have to be able to connect deep down with source, and you have to give God or give the universe what's on the inside, not really what's on the outside, because that's what we present to everyone.
yeah. I love what you're saying because I'm the same way. Like I will do it 5, 6 in the morning. Um, and for some reason at that time, I think you know this too. There's this quiet about the world at that moment. Like at 5, 6 in the morning, it's like everybody is sleeping and you are alone. And that is the best time to have that deep looking inward, relaxing, getting your mind ready for the day. For some reason at that time, it's great. Do you ever do it at night though? Do you ever do like an evening meditation before you sleep or anything like that or not?
No, I'm not. I haven't been too intentional about it.
Yeah.
Maybe, and the thing is you never know when you meditate, right? I might not call it meditating, but I
Yeah.
may be meditating. So it's plenty of times where I'm sitting in bed on the
Yeah.
pillow, just thinking about the day,
Yeah.
reflecting on my thoughts, reflecting on my decisions. And if you think about it, that's meditating.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm just not sitting in a specific way with my eyes closed, with my fingertips touching.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm just really in my mind. And I figured that that is another form of meditation as well. Or even in the shower, right? When you take your nighttime showers or baths,
Yeah.
um, and it's no music, no distractions. You just thinking to yourself, that's meditating.
Yeah.
The thing is being intentional about it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the thing about meditation is it's going back to, is this thought beneficial or should I let this go? As a man that's going through a divorce right now,
Yeah.
my mind constantly tries to go and think about the past.
Yeah.
And then my mind has to constantly remind me. It has to constantly remind me to let it go
Yeah.
and care more about the life that you're creating now than the life that you were living before. And I think that's a form of meditation itself. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a form of God as well. I feel like God is communicating and making sure that, that it's reminding me, or, that they are telling me that everything is going to be okay, and
Yeah.
not to put myself in a depression by letting my thoughts control me.
Yeah.
So I think I did. I think I meditate all throughout the whole entire day, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, I was
If you
into, I
you
mean, I
think about
really,
like
what's that? So go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say, if you think about it, meditation is all it's about your thoughts and paying attention to your thought processes. Before I
Yeah.
started meditating, I never paid attention to my thoughts. I think I was just a thinker that just thought. I was just going throughout the day,
Yeah.
letting marketing, letting distractions distract me. Now I'm aware of those things. So, I can tell when I'm being distracted. I can tell when I'm being drained. I can tell when my emotions are changing, and it's all because I'm paying attention to my thought processes, or to my. And I think that that's the benefit of meditation, is being able to think of things through before you act.
It's like a heightened level of self-awareness, I guess. Would you call it that in a way?
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it's like having a regulator. Hey, like
Yeah.
you always got a voice on the inside regulating what you're doing.
One example of that, I mean, I don't know if you know this TV show, but this TV show was in the 70s. It was called Kung Fu. And David Carradine was like this Kung Fu master that trained when he was a kid, and he would meditate, and then he would just kind of wander the world. And he'd come into like these towns, and people would confront him. There'd be criminals who want to fight him. And the way I look at meditation is, if you look at that character, if you've ever seen the TV show, which I love the TV show, but he would handle every situation with this like super cool, calm, like demeanor, even around
Mm,
people that wanted to just kill him. But
yeah.
you learn sort of this guy had this ability to control his emotions and his anger and his body, so that even though he was trained to take someone out, he didn't have to, because he could control what he said, how he acted, and in a way could control the situation. So it never would get that dangerous. Now, there were times in the show where there was fighting, because it's a TV show, and that's what people wanted to see, right? They wanted to see the action.
Right.
But if you look at the philosophy outside of who he is, I mean, outside of the fighting, you look at who he is and how he trained his mind to be that way. That's how I would attribute meditation, because there's nothing better than being cool under pressure. And I think it's almost like stoicism. If you've read about stoicism, it's just really understanding there are things that are in your control, and there are things that are out of your control. So you don't get hung up on the stuff that's out of your control, because you can control yourself, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, if you've never seen that show, I would definitely check it. You could probably find clips on YouTube, but it's really interesting. It's a really cool TV show that kind of blends the ideas of meditation and self-awareness with entertainment, but there's a lot of philosophy there with it. So,
Yeah, I love it. I think it's an amazing concept. It kind of reminds me, because even in my book, right, I explain how um so a lot of times we want to practice certain things.
yeah,
And sometimes, you need to practice to create repetition.
yeah,
Um, but when I learned how to meditate in the beginning and I got more advanced at it,
yeah,
what I learned is I can pretty much I can act out the same exact. I do a lot of speaking.
yeah,
So instead of me needing to go into the mirror and go and watch my expressions, to be
yeah,
honest with you, I can meditate and I can put myself through the same exact experience.
Yeah.
When I'm meditating, I can put myself in the audience and I can see myself doing the presentation. I can see myself doing my hand gestures. I can see myself. It's the weirdest thing, but because I put myself through the scenario over and over again, I can spit out my speeches verbatim.
Hmm.
I know where I want to stand. I know how my facial expressions should look. And I do that all because I can meditate and put myself through those scenarios. And to
Yeah.
me, it's like 5 times more beneficial than me acting it out and playing out the scenario in the physical. And I feel like that's where our mind is so it's so extremely beneficial because, a lot of times we panic because we put ourselves in situations that we're not familiar with.
Hmm.
But if you can put yourself in that scenario, in that situation, even if it's mentally, when you come across that situation in the physical, you've already prepared for it. You've already seen it.
Yeah.
You already know what can go wrong. You already know where you want to be, where you want to stand. It's
Yeah.
kind of like you've already prepared and you planned. And
Yeah.
when you prepare and you plan for anything, you usually have better results.
Right. Well, this has been really good, Brandon. I really appreciate you talking to me. I didn't realize we had so much in common, but uh, but this is great. So tell people listening how they can get involved with what you do, even if they're not here in Las Vegas, but anywhere else. And also, where can they find your books, your website? Like, how can people find out more or follow you in some way?
Thank you so much. So the best way to connect with me is LinkedIn professionally. My LinkedIn is Brandon Ward. I think if you put Brandon Ward Las Vegas, I'll pop up.
Yeah.
My business is the We Mentality. If you go to the We Mentality, the THEWE Mentality .com, you can find all my information, all our products, all our services that we provide.
Yeah.
I'm on all social media networks. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram as well. But then also, if you are out of town, if you are and you want to connect and we can connect, even if it's not one-on-one, you want to join my community. I have a community called Club Core where we do a hybrid model. We meet in person and we meet online. So you can definitely join our group and you can attend some of our meetings virtually and connect with me there. And then if you are very serious about connecting with me, like you want to talk to me, you could just call me at 702-482-2574.
All right. Well, Brandon Ward, thank you so much for all of this information, all the things you're doing in the business community. I know you and I will probably work together a lot more in the coming few months, so I'm looking forward to it. But thank you again, and I look forward to getting this out there for people to listen to.
All right, Brian, I appreciate you. Thank you for this platform. To your success, buddy.
Thanks. Hey, this is Ryan with the Business Stories Podcast. And if you're a franchisor, franchise consultant, broker, or just a small business owner, you've got to check out clienttether.com. It's an amazing sales automation tool that is revolutionizing the industry. If you want to learn more, go to clienttether.com and inquire within.